Chapter 28. Mysterious Parents. Wang Fei's injury was very serious, but it wasn't injured by the heaven-escaping hand. Rather, it was caused by his own use of golden needles to puncture the acupuncture points and forcibly raise his strength. And now the after-effects had erupted, and it was estimated that he wouldn't be able to get out of bed within a few months. At the same time, his realm also fell from the 6th level of the Foundation Establishment stage to the 5th level of the Foundation Establishment stage. Don't think he can cultivate back within a year. This little beast cannot be kept. Wang Chon looked at his father and said in a low voice. The third elder's face was gloomy as he nodded. Kang Chon's talent that had erupted today had already scared them. If another 3 to 5 years passed, they were afraid that none of them would be Kang Chon's match. The two of them lifted up Wang Fei and hurriedly left the square. Whether it was Wang Fei's injuries or their mood at the moment, they were not willing to stay here any longer. Wang Tixiong, who was talking with the city lord, Master Feng Yuan and the others, glanced at the departing third elder, and Wang Chon. A cold smile flashed in his eyes. However, then he enthusiastically talked to the crowd. On the high platform, another person also noticed the departing third elder, and Wang Chon's father and son. He was Lin Wei, the son of Lin Beichen, the Lin family's head. As Lin Wei looked at the departing third elder and Wang Chon, a glint of refinement flashed in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth pulled up into a bizarre smile. The change was short-lived, and he then immediately engaged in praising Kang Chon. After Kang Chon's bar mitzvah, Wang Tixiong held a banquet for all the celebrities of Heavy Iron City who had come to congratulate him. And Kang Chon was also in the middle of the banquet, suffering from a series of booze bombardments, which only tired him out enough that he finally left by taking the piss. Listening to the rainy pavilion, Kang Chon collapsed in the room, panting heavily. His face was red. That was all from being doused with liquor. Even if he was a cultivator, after drinking so much liquor, he still felt a hint of drunkenness. Knock, knock, knock. A knock on the door suddenly came. Kang Chon opened the door, and it appeared that Jin Sanxiao was standing outside the door with a smile on his face. Kang Chon Xiao, how did you pee here? What? Your Wang family's thatch is so big. Jin Sanxiao looked at Kang Chon and joked. Kang Chon was full of bitter smiles. Don't you say sarcasm. It's not like you didn't see the look of those people just now. Since the last auction, Kang Chon had dealt with Jin Sanxiao quite a bit more. We were all youths, and this back and forth naturally became friends. Of course, this was mainly because Jin Sanxiao had helped him a lot. Kang Chon invited Jin Sanxiao in, and the two youths sat in the room and chatted. They were all about the same age, and they both chatted away. They started with cultivation and talked about each other's cultivation experience. However, the results shocked Kang Chon. The other party's understanding of cultivation was much stronger than his. And at the same time, he also got Jin Sanxiao's exact cultivation level from Emperor Dan, peak of the 9th level of the Foundation Establishment stage. When he heard this cultivation level from Emperor Dan, Kang Chon was incomparably shocked. The other party's age was only 1 or 2 years older than him, yet his strength was so much stronger than him. Compared to him, Li Chunjiao, Wang Fei, or whatever had to step aside. Kid, don't be discouraged. Big cultivation families like them have received key training since they were young. Moreover, they all took Foundation Establishment Dan directly when they were young, and then took returning Yuan Dan to cultivate. So their speed is naturally faster than yours. Emperor Dan explained thus. Kang Chon smiled and understood. If he hadn't been stopped for 9 years by the Foundation Establishment, he might have already formed the Dan by now. After knowing Jin Sanxiao's cultivation, Kang Chon also knew that his own little level was not worthy of talking about cultivation tips with others. Good thing he had the Dan Emperor as a cheat in his possession, and directly moved the Dan Emperor's knowledge. Now Jin Sanxiao was shocked. Of course he knew Kang Chon's cultivation. The reason why he talked about cultivation tips with Kang Tian was actually to kindly point out Kang Tian, but he didn't expect to be pointed out by the other party instead. Could it be that his alchemist master teacher imparted it to him? Jin Sanshao thought so in his heart. He couldn't help but feel a little envious. With such a master, Kang Tian's cultivation path in the future would definitely be much smoother. After the two exchanged their insights, they began to talk about some things in the cultivation world. Of course, Kang Tian had never left Heavy Iron City. His eyesight was too small, most of the time. It was still Jin Sanshao who was explaining, and he was responsible for listening to the stories. Listening to Jin Sanshao's explanation, Kang Tian had a general understanding of the cultivation world. Previously, Kang Tian only knew about the Flood Continent and the Great Tang Country, but now he knew that there were many other countries that existed on the Flood Continent, and all of these countries were subject to the moderation of the great sects of the cultivation world. In the Flood Continent's cultivation world, it was divided into the righteous way and the devil's way. Among the righteous cultivation sects, the Heavenly Tao sect is the leader, followed by the 100 Flowers sect and the 10,000 Buddhist sect. Among the Devil Tao, the Heavenly Demon sect was the leader, with the 10,000 Demon Hall and the Poison sect being slightly weaker. These 6 top sects ruled the entire Flood Continent cultivation world, and the 6 empires in the Flood Continent were all subordinate to these 6 cultivation sects. And these empires were the backyard for them to train their disciples. Of course, in addition to these 6 top sects, there are still many sects in the cultivation world, but the influence of these sects is very small, and most of them are dependent on these 6 sects. The Great Tang Country, where Kang Tian was located, was just a small country on the Flood Continent, belonging to the sphere of influence of the Heavenly Tao sect. After listening to Jin Sanshao's explanation, Kang Tian could not help but sigh. We are now sitting on a well and watching the sky. Jin Sanshao nodded at his words. Although he was better than Kang Tian, compared to the entire Flood Continent, they were all sitting on the same well and watching the sky. But one day, I will travel the entire Flood Continent. Kang Tian stood up and said proudly, his eyes filled with a confident glow. His confidence seemed to have infected Jin Sanshao, who also stood up and said, "Good. When the time comes, we 2 brothers will break into this cultivation world together." Kang Tian sniffed and looked at Jin Sanshao. The 2 of them looked at each other and then laughed out loud. The matter of Kang Tian striking a chord at the bar mitzvah had spread throughout the entire Heavy Iron City in just a few days. Everyone was shocked, and they all sighed at the vagaries of the heavens. That genius from back in the day had returned once again. Compared to the shock of the people of Heavy Iron City, the people of the Wong family were even more incredulous. That waste they had witnessed for 9 years of failed foundation building had turned into a dragon and soared into the heavens in a single shot. Undoubtedly, after the bar mitzvah, Kang Tian's status in the Wong family changed completely. Now there was not a single person who dared to underestimate him. Those underlings saw him with a look of awe. Where was the disdain and mockery from the beginning? The strong were honored. Kang Tian used his own deeds to prove the everlasting law of this world. Bang bang bang, by the waterfall at the back of the royal mansion, 2 figures were constantly colliding in mid-air, erupting in a burst of loud noises. This was Kang Tian and Xiao Jin. On the boulder to the side, Emperor Dan roasted fish while instructing them in cultivation. With the end of the bar mitzvah, Kang Tian re-entered the days of bitter cultivation. He wouldn't be lazy just because he defeated Wang Fei. His goal was still a long way off. Moreover, on the night of the bar mitzvah, Kang Tian and Jin Sanshao chatted a lot. The most important of which was the Heavenly Tao sect's apostle acceptance ceremony in 3 years' time. And the 2 of them had already agreed to go to the ceremony together at that time. In Heavy Iron City, and even in the entire Great Tang Kingdom, the Heavenly Tao sect's disciple acceptance ceremony was a very important matter that no one knew about, especially in this generation. Heavy Iron City had two geniuses in Kang Chon and Li Chunjiao, causing many people to start paying attention to this legendary grand ceremony. Undoubtedly, both Kang Chon and Li Chunjiao were qualified to participate in this kind of grand ceremony, and it was even possible that they would be accepted as disciples by the Heavenly Dao sect, which would truly be an event that would honor the family. One must know that the Wang family's ancestor was an inner disciple of the Heavenly Dao sect, and this had always been the Wang family's proudest thing. If this generation Kang Chon was able to join the Heavenly Dao sect, then the entire Wang family would benefit and become a great power in the Great Tang Kingdom. Kang Chon's next goal was to worship the Heavenly Dao sect, and he was now working hard with that goal. Kid, if you want to worship the Heavenly Dao sect, you are still far from it with your current strength alone. You have to know that the Heavenly Dao sect is very strict in accepting disciples, and their most basic requirement is to have formed a Dan before the age of 50. Emperor Dan said as he grilled the fish. After Kang Chon and Xiao Jin clashed their fists with each other, they flew down and stayed on the side to listen up. Forming a Dan before the age of 50. This isn't difficult. Why hasn't a single person appeared in our Heavy Iron City before? Kang Chon curiously said. Emperor Dan glanced at him and explained, this is just the most basic condition. In fact, every time the Heaven's Path sect recruits disciples, there is a set number. Beyond that, even if you have good qualifications, they don't want them. So for this quota, many of the young people who participate in the grand ceremony have to compete with each other. And that kind of brutal scene is not something that you can imagine right now. Kang Chon couldn't help but smack his lips when he heard this. He hadn't thought that the Heavenly Dao sect still had a set number of disciples to accept. In this case, it seemed that it wasn't enough to just reach the Jiden stage. One had to be even stronger to be able to do so. Emperor Dan looked at Kang Chon, his face serious. What you need to do now is to try to raise your cultivation even higher within these 3 years, so that you can meet the Heavenly Dao sect's disciple acceptance ceremony 3 years from now. Yes, Kang Chon nodded, a look of determination in his eyes. Since the bar mitzvah, he had begun his bitter cultivation. During the day, he fought against Little Gold, exercising his real-world combat abilities and improving his combat power. At night, he practiced Qi and worked hard to raise his cultivation. With the help of the return to origin pill and the special bloodline of the Kang Chon hegemony blood, Kang Chon's cultivation speed was still very fast. Little Gold, we'll see you tomorrow. Z. As the sun set in the west, in the evening, Kang Chon waved goodbye to the little golden monkey. The little golden monkey was full of spirituality and waved goodbye to Kang Chon. Returning from the back of the mountain to the royal mansion with Kang Chon's current speed was only half a pot of tea. At the entrance of the royal mansion, the two guards guarding the door saw Kang Chon. Their eyes instantly sizzled, and they saluted with a face full of respect. Good day, young Master Kang Chon. Kang Chon nodded. Ever since the bar mitzvah, he had already clearly felt a change, the attitudes of the people around him, and it all came from his great strength. Young Master Kang Chon, the clan chief has something to find you, saying that you should go to the study to meet him immediately after you return. A guard at the gate called out to Kang Chon and said respectfully. Kang Chon was stunned at the words. Then he nodded and turned to leave. What does Grandpa want to see me about? With a strong curiosity, Kang Chon walked towards his maternal grandfather's study. He knew that his maternal grandfather, as the patriarch of the Wang family, usually had a lot of things to be busy with. And ever since the bar mitzvah, this was the first time his maternal grandfather had asked to see him in private. And usually they only saw each other in the hall when they ate. Through the winding corridor, Kang Chon came to a room. It's Chona, right? Come in. Without waiting for Kang Chon to open his mouth, a familiar and old voice came from inside the house, making Kang Chon feel a warmth in his heart. This was the grandpa who loved him the most. creak. Pushing open the door, Kang Chon saw Grandpa, who was sitting on a chair. Grandpa was looking at him with a face full of relief as he walked in. "Grandpa," Kang Chon respectfully bowed. "All right, what else are we grandparents and grandchildren polite about? Have a seat." Wang Tixiong waved his hand and pointed to the chair next to him, signaling Kang Chon to sit down and talk. Kang Chon was also very casual in front of Grandpa, so he sat down upon hearing this. He looked at the old man in front of him with a clear gaze, waiting for the other party's teachings. Wang Tixiong first carefully sized up Kang Chon, then nodded his head in satisfaction and said in relief, "Not bad. The cultivation at the 5th level of the foundation establishment stage is very solid. It seems that you haven't been lazy after the bar mitzvah, so Grandpa is relieved."